Death and Dementia, where I left off, I had just finished my older brother's estate, dealing with the paperwork and all that stuff. I mentioned that when I first started dealing with his estate, mom and dad were just going through a tough time, and understandably so. And they had asked me to take over their finances as well. And so we went down, and at the time, mom and dad were, like I said, they were driving. They were making their own decisions. They had been doing their own paperwork. They just really didn't have it in them to keep doing it. And I knew I was going to be doing it eventually anyway. So called a lawyer and said, hey, how do I do this legally so no one's going to ask any questions down the road, whether it's the government or distant relatives or something like that. And so, and mom and dad wanted their trust to be redone as well because they needed to have our older brother taken out of it since he was dead. And my lawyer couldn't do it because she had done my trust and there'd be a conflict of interest. So we had to go and find another lawyer who was highly recommended, and she's outstanding. I think she's going to end up doing like a video meeting with me to put on here. So she took care, she independently or managed mom and dad's trust. She was the one in charge of making the changes with mom and dad, and my brother and I were there. But she represented mom and dad, period, and their trust. And that took away the conflict of interest, so my lawyer didn't do it. And so we got all that changed, and I'll let her say what she did for the paperwork to make it legal. But it made it to the point that basically mom, dad, myself, or my brother can all make financial decisions for their trust and for them. And then you have to go into healthcare power of attorney, which we got all that taken care of as well, which becomes hugely important down the road. So during this time, I'm still dealing with our brother's estate, or finishing that up at least. And one of the things that I mentioned before, we realized with his personal property, we could just give it away to his friends because mom was the next of kin. But as I mentioned before, most families are going to have at least one dick in them, and that's going to whine and complain, and I want this and I want the money. And it comes down to it's mom and dad's money. It's their decision what to do with it. But when they're gone, the way the lawyer explained it to us is that if you don't have something in writing, you can have someone come out and grieve it and say, well, you could have sold that lamp for $20. Why didn't you do that? You could have sold that couch for $15. Why didn't you do that? And if you end up getting sucked into that, it's going to be years and years and years of grief to deal with it. And so the attorney ended up putting something in there saying that when mom and dad are gone, it is up to my brother and I to decide what to do with the personal property. Mom and dad have a sheet that they can write that, I want this necklace to go to so-and-so, or this pain to go to whoever. And then we follow those orders. But anything outside of that couch or whatever, we just decide what to do with, which is going to make it much easier. So mom and dad had that list that they can fill out for their property. What they started doing before they really started declining was giving things to people while they're still around, and it makes them happy to do. And I'll go a little bit more into that in another video, but that's one of the ways for them to handle that. So after we got all the paperwork done, and I had taken over all the finances, my brother and I, and I thought that I still had plenty of time to talk to mom and dad about their bank accounts, about their insurances, about a lot of those things. And I was so busy with dealing with my brother's estate and all those other things that I figured I'll just talk to mom and dad next year and figure it out then. And so I had enough information to do their taxes for that first year, got that done. But I want to say probably a year-ish after I took over their finances was when I finally sat down and started going through all the paperwork. And once again, when you're dealing with people from that generation, everything was kept in paper form. When we finally ended up going through everything and I brought all the paperwork home, I had to bring 150 pounds of paper to the company down here to shred. 150 pounds. And so it's a lot to go through. So when I finally got to it, like I said, about a year after, I started asking mom and dad some questions because I figured, hey, I'm grateful that they're still here to talk to them. It was already too late. And so their decline, we along the way, we had noticed that the little things here and there were, Dad always fixed everything around the house. He would build things, did a lot of woodworking and things like that. Growing up, he was in real estate. He would take over, take a house and put it up for sale for people. And he'd be like, hey, I'll fix the sheetrock. I'll fix the, put insulation in here. And he'd just have my brother and I go do it. And he taught us how to do all those things. And we started noticing that he was no longer able to do those things. And he kind of slowly, well, not too slowly, he started getting to the point where he wanted to do some things in the shop, and we really weren't comfortable with him being around power tools. And this is where we had to make a lot of choices. So I ended up going over one day and asked him if I could borrow a bunch of his power tools. I just wanted to get him out of the house. And so I got the main ones, like a router and table saw and things like that, and just put them in storage because I didn't want them around there. And he thinks I'm borrowing them. He's doing something nice for me, and so that kind of worked. It got to the point we were talking to him about his driving, and he shouldn't have been driving, but it's a tough conversation to have someone give up their freedom like that is not easy. And so over time we had brief conversations about, hey, Dad, do you really think you should be driving and this and that? And ultimately we end up getting him to stop driving. With Mom, we could start to see, once again, things that just were out of the norm. Mom back in the day worked 12 plus hour days and would bring work home. And then it got to the point where if anything went wrong at the house, I would have to go fix it. Or if she actually got a bill mailed to her, she didn't know what to do with it. And those little things started slipping. So we started realizing the downhill slide was going much, much quicker than we had thought it was going to occur. So my brother and I started talking about it might be time to get them some professional help, to have people there daily to at least help them with, because they were managing their own pills at that point, and I don't think they really should have been. That's when we kind of had to start working with their doctors. And Dad had a really good doctor. He was my doctor before I had to change providers for years. And he was on top of everything. Great, great guy. Mom's doctor, I started trying to get to know. And I'll talk about him a little bit more. But come to find out, you can actually make it through years of medical school. You can actually open your own practice, and you can still be a worthless dick. And the guy was just worth absolutely nothing. We didn't do well together. Ultimately, I ended up changing their doctors, which I'll mention a little bit more in another video. But as we started seeing them make these mental changes and this mental deterioration, my brother and I started looking out and trying to figure out if we could get the outside help for a home. Outside help for like 24-hour care, you're looking at a couple $100,000 a year. I did find a good company that I learned to trust. We ended up not needing them because Mom and Dad went into assisted living. But I'm going to try to get someone from that company to do like a video call with me so I can ask them some questions for these videos. And we started looking for assisted living places as well. That's a chore, and I did meet some good people along the way. I will try to get them to do some video meetings as well, so we can help people do that a little bit easier than we end up taking care of it. So what we kind of did in the meantime, while we were looking for a solution for all this, is we ended up having a couple very close family friends who are willing to go in and take care of mom and dad, just meals and putting the bills somewhere where they won't throw them away and I could get to them. Or they would bring the bills and paperwork like that to me. Because that started to be a problem too, where a bill would come in and one of them would throw it away, and then all of a sudden I'm getting late bills that are coming in. So we had two family friends. One of them did it for a short time. The other one has helped out for a long time and is still helping us out. And we had absolute 100% trust in her, which is crucial when you're dealing with your folks. And so with all the meals and things like that taken care of, it helped me be able to step back a little bit and deal with the finances, deal with the records, and you have to learn a lot. And the time crunch for us was a lot quicker. I was hoping to learn these things with mom and dad's help over a period of maybe a couple of years, and they just, after I finally got to the point where I started asking, they didn't have the answers for my questions. And so unfortunately I had to find a lot of these answers for myself. So one of the things that you're going to end up dealing with, you're going to have to find out everything about your loved ones that you're caring for. For me, it's my folks, and you didn't want to know some of these things. You have to, like, talk to mom's gynecologist. No one wants to know that. Dad's proctologist. I don't want to have any idea about that stuff, but I need to know because my brother and I are now the ones making the decision on that, and it's kind of a tough pill to swallow. And hard to actually wrap your head around that this is where we are and this is what I have to do. So my next video I'm going to put up is actually a family counselor, because I told you a lot of this can be stressful, and hopefully you guys find that helpful. And then I'll get more into how we end up getting mom and dad into assisted living and some of the signs we saw during their decline. But until then, God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America.